Hello, we will be discussing 5 questions from modern history in this lecture. Let's look at the first question. The first question is, which amongst the following are the correct statements pertaining to the Treaty of Allahabad? Now, the first statement is, Robert Clive signed two important treaties with the Nawab of Awadh and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. The second statement is, Awadh was annexed. The third is, the treaty was signed in August 1765, and the last is, the East India Company was granted the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Now, in here, we have to find the correct statement. Now, the correct statement here is that only A, C, and D are correct. So that means option 1 is correct. Let's understand about this. Robert Clive basically concluded two treaties at Allahabad in the year 1765 in the month of August. So this bit is right. It was August 1765 and the treaty was signed. Now this treaty, like I told you, were two. One of them was actually signed with the Nawab of Awadh and the second one was signed with the Mughal emperor, that is Shah Alam II. The thing that you have to understand here is that why is this B statement wrong? It is wrong because Awadh was never annexed. Basically, Robert Clive did not want to annex Awadh because he would want that Awadh should become what? Awadh should become a buffer state. It should become a buffer state. What is the reason behind him wanting, Awadh to be a buffer state is because Clive did not want to annex Awadh because it would have placed the East India Company under the obligation to protect an extensive land. Let me just show it to you through the example. Let's say this is where Awadh is, right? Now, this is the Bengal area. Now, all of this was under the East India Company. Now, Robert Clive did not want to annex Awadh. Why? Because he wanted that, this entire mass of land would provide a buffer to the this portion, that is to the Bengal area. And this, of course, includes Bihar, Bengal, and Odisha, right? So he wanted that Awadh should be under an obligation to protect an extensive land frontier from the invasions, that is from the Afghan invasions and especially from the Maratha invasions. So down here, the Maratha invasions would basically, if Awadh is not annexed, then they will not directly, attack, that is Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. So for that reason, Clive did not want to get a hold of Awadh. He said that we will make Nawab a firm friend of the company and would turn Awadh into a buffer state. So these are all the important points pertaining to the Treaty of Allahabad. Remember the year, and there were two that were signed with the Nawab of Awadh and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. The Nawab of Awadh's name was Shujauddaulah. Okay, Shujauddaulah. Then let's get to the next question. The next question is, choose the incorrect statements in reference to the philosophy of Dayanand Saraswati. So who are we concerned with here? We're concerned with the philosophy of Dayanand Saraswati. Now the first statement here says, his slogan Back to Vedas was a call for the revival of Vedic learning and Vedic purity of religion. The second statement is, the Arya Samaj fixed the minimum age at 16 for both boys and girls. The third is, his vision of India included a classless and a casteless society, and he did not subscribe to the Vedic notions of Chaturvarna system. Now we have to find the incorrect statements from these four. The correct answer to this is option second, that is the only incorrect statements from these four are B and D. So let's look at it. You see, Arya Samaj movement was simply a result. It was a reaction which resulted in the formation of the Arya Samaj. What was this reaction against? This reaction was simply against the Western influences. So, from that reason, option 1 is absolutely correct. His slogan, Back to Vedas, was a call for a revival of Vedic learning and Vedic purity of religion. Dayanand Saraswati was basically the founder of the Arya Samaj. Dayanand Saraswati expounded his views in the important text, and that the name of the text is Satyarth Prakash. In English, this is the true exposition. Dayanand Saraswati basically subscribed. It's not that he did not, he did subscribe to the Vedic notions of Chaturvarna system. In this, basically, he said that there are four varnas, which is Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Now, Dayanand Saraswati basically said that a person was to be identified as either a Brahmin or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra, not by birth, very important, not by birth, but according to the occupation or according to the merit of that person. So it was not going to be on the basis of birth, but on the basis of work, on the basis of occupation, on the basis of the merit of the person. So this statement is wrong because he did subscribe to the Vedic notions of Chaturvarna system. Now his vision of India included a classless and a casteless society. This is absolutely correct. We find it's mentioned in the text, like I told you, Satyarth Prakash. Here, basically, he says that our vision of India is one which is not divided on the basis of classes, which is not divided on the basis of caste. He had a vision of a unified India. And this unified society or this unified India in terms of everything, for instance, politically, nationally, religiously, socially, culturally, all of these factors, right? Now, the second statement here is wrong. Why? Because Arya Samaj fixed the minimum age at 16 for both boys and girls is wrong. The age that was fixed was 25 for boys and 16 for girls. Now, this is extremely important. Why? Because you have to understand the premise of it. There's a famous quote by Dayanand Saraswati which says, Hindu race is basically what? Children of children. So here children are getting married off at really early ages and they're bearing children. So Hindu race can simply be defined as children of children. This is basically his criticism to, getting children married off at an early age. And that is why he basically proposed that we should fix the minimum age 25 for boys and 16 for girls. Very important. And then the last statement that we have here, his slogan Back to the Vedas was a call for revival of Vedic learning and Vedic purity of religion. This is absolutely correct. Like I told you, he basically believed that the Aryan religion should be common for all. Aryan religion should be common, to all. And that is how you can link it with this point here that he thought of a unified society. A unified society politically, nationally, religiously, socially, and culturally. So B and D were incorrect here. I hope this is clear. Let's get to the next question. The next question is, consider the following statements in reference to the Nehru report. Now, Nehru report is an extremely important report. We have to find the correct statements here. The first is, Nehru's report was an answer to Lord Birkenhead's challenge, which was submitted in August 1928. The second is, linguistic provinces were mentioned in the Nehru report. The third is, self-governing dominions as the form of the government was recommended. And the last is, 19 fundamental rights were recommended, including equal rights for women, universal adult suffrage, etc. So these are the four statements given to us. We have to find the correct statement. Now, amongst the options here, option 1 is correct. That is, all the above statements are correct. Let's understand a little about the Nehru report. The first statement is giving us an introduction to it. That is, the Nehru report was actually an answer to Lord Birkenhead's challenge. This report was submitted and finalized by August 1928. So, very important. Especially, it was a challenge to Lord Birkenhead. To give you a little insight into the history, Lord Birkenhead basically challenged the Indians that they are not capable, that is, they are incapable of framing a constitution for themselves. And this challenge was taken up by the members of the INC, and as a result, Nehru took up this challenge and submitted its report in return. Now, this report is basically dealing with a number of things. It's extremely important. We'll discuss it. This report talked about linguistic provinces. That is, there should be a formation of provinces on the basis of language. Now, this is something that India actually followed even after independence. So, this is something India followed. For example, you can remember the first state that was formed on the linguistic basis was actually the Andhra state. Then the report actually talked about that there should be the dominion status on the lines of, that is, the sea. There should be self-governing dominions as the form of or on the lines of the government that was recommended in the Nehru report. Now, there was a rejection. One of the points that is missing here, but extremely important, is that there was a rejection to separate electorate. Separate electorates was something which was rejected. What was proposed instead was that there will be joint electorate with reservation for Muslims. And this reservation for Muslims shall only be at a place where they are in minority. Where they are in majority, there they would not be provided reservation. So only where they are in minority would they get reservation, not where they are in majority. To give you an example of such places, I can give you, for instance, Bengal. So they would not be provided reservation in Bengal. Similarly, in Punjab, would not be provided reservation in Punjab. So that's a very important point. Then you have to also understand that 19 fundamental rights were basically proposed in this Nehru report. Some of the ones are given here, for instance, equal rights for women, universal adult suffrage, right to form union. So all of these were mentioned pretty much in detail in the Nehru report. Along with that, some other extra points that you must remember pertaining to the Nehru report is it asked for responsible government at the center and in also the provinces. So at both places, both at the center and the provinces, responsible government was something which was asked for. It also recommended complete dissociation of state from religion. That is, it talked about secularism and the negative definition of secularism, which is complete dissociation of the state from the religion. And in place of this, it talked about that there shall be complete protection and respect that should be given to cultural and religious minorities. So if you see all of these points that we're writing down here, they are all taken up in the Constitution of India. So this is the basic idea that the freedom fighters, the ones who fought for the independence of India, the ones who framed the Constitution of India, this is what the idea of India was in their heads, and we have taken a lot many things from this Nehru report in our Constitution of India. Another important bit pertaining to the Nehru report was that it also recommended Indian Parliament at the center to consist of 500 members, that is, the House of Representatives should be elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage, and a House of 200-member Senate to be elected by provincial councils, the House of Representatives to have a tenure of 5 years, and the Senate to have a tenure of 7 years. So this is an additional bit that you remember. This was something which is a part of the Nehru report itself. Now, these are some of the important things, but the statements that were given to us were these four, and all these four are correct. So, all of the above is the correct answer to the third question. Then the next question is, choose the correct statement in relation to Indian Councils Act 1892. Now, the statements are given to us. We have to choose the correct one. The first is, the Legislative Council of Governor General was enlarged. The Legislative Council of Governor General was enlarged. The second is, it introduced the principle of representation in the Indian Legislative Council. The third is, it introduced an element of indirect election for the selection of some of the non-official members. The last is, the term election was firmly provided in the Act. Now we have to find what we have to choose the correct statement. The correct statement from these four. So the correct answer to this is all except D. That is, this is correct, this is correct, this is correct, but this is not correct. Let's look into it. The Indian Council Act 1892, you see, in the year 1885, Indian National Congress was founded, and Indian National Congress saw that reforms of the councils is the root cause of all other reforms. So there needs to be reform at the council, and if this happens, all the things will fall into place. So this was the demand of the Congress, that they should what? They should increase the legislative councils, or rather they should expand the legislative councils, and the number of non-official members must increase both at the central and at the provincial legislative councils. Now, this is something which was accepted in the Indian Council Act 1892. So, this first statement, the Legislative Council of the Governor General was enlarged, is absolutely correct. Then, the Indian Council Act 1892 provided that the Legislative Council of the Governor General should be enlarged. So, that is correct. The university, district board, municipalities, zamindars, trade bodies, and chambers of commerce were empowered to recommend the members of the provincial council. So here this point is also correct, that it introduced the principle of representation in the Indian Legislative Council. The term election. Now let's come to the D statement. The term election was not firmly provided. It was not firmly provided, and since the not word is missing here, the statement D is incorrect. So what happened? The term election was firmly avoided. An element of indirect election was accepted in the selection of some of the non-official members. The members of the legislatures were now entitled to express their views upon financial statements, which were henceforth to be made on the floors of the legislatures. They could also put questions with certain limits to the executives on the matters of public interest, but only after giving 6 days notice. So if you see, all these above three statements are correct. The only problem is with the last statement, that the word election was not firmly provided in the Act. It was absolutely avoided. So these are the important points pertaining to Indian Councils Act 1892. Let's get to the last and the next question. Under the Licensing Regulation Act 1823, Mirat ul Akbar had to stop the publication. So it is telling us something that happened because of the licensing regulation in 1823, that Mirat ul Akbar had to stop the publication. Now the question that is asked to us is, Mirat ul Akbar is associated with, the first option is Sayyid Baruddin Tayabji, second is Henry Vivian Derozio, third is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and the fourth is Dwarka Nath Tagore. So the correct answer here is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Let's know a little about this Mirat ul Akbar. Mirat ul Akbar was the Persian language journal. It was a Persian language journal. It was founded and edited by who? Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Very important. It was published on a weekly basis on Fridays. Under the licensing regulation 1823, like it is given here, you have to understand who was this by. So this was by John Adams. John Adams issued the regulation stating that starting or using a press without a license was a penal offense. So without a license, nobody could start or nobody could, issue a press or start up a paper or start up a journal, anything. But what is the need here? That without the license, it could not be done. And if somebody is doing it without a license, that person will be punished accordingly. Why? Because this is a penal offense. The act was extended, like I told you, to cover journals. It also covered pamphlets. It also covered books and newspapers. These restrictions were chiefly directed against the Indian language newspapers or those edited by the Indians. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's Mirat ul Akbar was some was the Persian journal which actually had to stop the publication. So this is extremely important. You have to remember a little bit about Mirat ul Akbar. Also, this was the first Persian journal. So this especially becomes extremely important from the exam's point of view. And this was founded and edited by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So these are our 5 questions for modern history. I hope this was informative. Thank you for watching.